Welcome to Designing by Thread. Hi, I'm Terry White. Today I'm going to show you the button flower quilt. I'm going to show you simple method of applique and strip piecing. The button flower quilt is one of a series of designs that I'm working on in my arts and crafts genre. This pattern is 42 inches by 54 inches. This quilt consists of 4 blocks. Each one is an applique button flower. The borders are stripped, and the final quilting is a 3/4 inch grid. This is a strip border. Now I start with black and gray, and the first thing I do is I press the fabric really well before I start to cut. And I always starch the fabric. It really helps to stabilize the fabric when it comes to cutting and when it comes to piecing. Now I'm going to lay out the strips like this. These are 1.5 inch wide strips, and they'll finish at 1 inch. So I'm going to sew these together, and then this is what I get. Now I'm going to show you how I stitch together strips so that I can be as close to perfect as possible. Now, when you're doing strip piecing, when you're doing the actual piecing, one of the important things is to ride the fabric on both feed teeth. If you just ride it along one, it's not as stable, and a lot of times you get wobblies. So this is what I like to do. I like a big foot like this one because it'll hold the fabric down as it's going over both feed teeth. So that is also an extra stabilization. Now my needle is in center needle position, so I'm going to be moving it over to the right, and a lot of machines have this capability, so that you can have your 1/4 inch seam by moving the needle instead of your fabric. Okay, now the next thing that I think is very important, and from watching lots of people stitch in classes, the machine is already going faster than you can do this by hand. Believe me, for years I did it by hand. So you don't want to speed along. If you speed along, you lose control of the fabric. Okay? This is the only place, this is one of the few places where you have control over the perfection of your work. And so you see, I can see my fabric. This is a clear foot also, so I can see right where it is. And so I'm going to try very hard to have a seam allowance that is consistent all the way down this strip of fabric. And the other thing that I would like to mention is that I always use something like a 2.5 stitch length. Use a 2.5 stitch length, and your fabric doesn't pucker quite as much as if you use something tighter. And there is a little bit of give. Now, after I've stripped together the gray and black, I'm going to press. There are a lot of different ways to press. I usually start on the back side. And you can press everything going this direction if you want to, or this direction if you want to. Some people press things open, but this is a quilt that's going to be used. So I want to keep the seam allowances together. But the way I'm pressing here is I'm pressing towards the gray and towards the gray, see, towards the gray. So what I'm going to end up with when I'm done pressing is it'll be very stable because the seam allowances are together, for one thing. And the other thing is, on the right side, the gray columns are going to be raised up, and they'll be consistently raised up. The other thing is, this helps to stabilize this patchwork when you press it this way. Now, here I have this 45 inch long strips of the gray and black. My next step is to cut these at the appropriate length. Okay, so that I end up with a striped border by cutting across. See, that's so simple. And then I'll stitch these units together for my borders. I want to show you something about cutting once you have the strips done. The first thing that you'll do is clean the edge. Now when I cut, I hold my ruler down in the place that I'm cutting, and if I'm cutting longer length, I'll move my hand as I cut. I press down with my hand and I keep my little finger right over here along the edge of the ruler so the ruler doesn't go this way. The next thing I want to show you is that when I hold my rotary cutter, I angle it. You see how I'm angling it? I'm not going to go straight up and down like this. I angle it, and what that does is it keeps you from going off like this. You see? And then I line up my fabric with my cutting mat, and then I line up my ruler with my cutting mat. And I do that each time to make sure that these strips aren't traveling, moving around, because each step can cause you to be a little bit less and less perfect. We know we're never going to get to perfect, but we strive for something close. Now I want to tell you something else about patchwork, about strip piecing. Strip piecing was devised by the Seminole Indians, and first they used ribbons, and then quilters took the idea and enlarged the strips, because Seminole patchwork is very, very tiny. There's a lot of things that you can do with strips like this, besides making the strip border. And all of your strip piecing patterns come from this very simple technique. You see? If we start with the gray and we end with black,